Hello, friends.
Hey, Julia. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Michael. Thank you so much. I know it's been a while. I was overdue for JHC and Friends, so I'm so glad that you had time to hop on my humble show.
Absolutely. Love coming on, especially on a beautiful Tuesday. Got the light coming in. It's nice and easy today.
I know. I'm so happy about the weather being okay. It was surprisingly cold this morning,
Yes. I
but
love that. I love that. It keeps everything nice and cool in here.
So let me do a quick intro. For those of you
Mhm.
who don't know, JHC and Friends is all about featuring local Tallahassee business owners, creators, influencers, and Michael Ciccarelli-Walsh
You got it.
is a local author and young professional here in Tallahassee. You're originally from New York, and he grew up in Tampa, Florida, and he came to FSU in 2013 and hasn't left Tallahassee since. So we're going to talk about why. And you double major, right?
Mhm.
FSU alum, current FSU employee now, and member of FSU Young Alumni Council. And you also graduated from UCLA online screenwriting program in 2022. So happy to have you on today.
Happy to be here. When you list it like that, I'm like, oh man, I did a lot in Tallahassee. I don't, I don't think of it that much.
I'm excited because you're one of the few authors. I don't think I even had an author before yet. This is the 48th episode here for JC and Friends. And so let's talk about why you got into writing. Did you always want to be an author?
I always wanted to be a storyteller, but I wouldn't say an author right off the bat. I loved movies mostly and not so much books. It took me a while growing up to get into books, but I loved movies, loved Star Wars and Star Trek and all those things where there's space and Marvel movies, high flying adventures, superheroes. So I kind of originally planned to make films and go to film school. And that's originally why I came to FSU. Ended up in media
Oh.
production instead, didn't get into the film program. And I'm kind of glad. I felt like I got a better sense because what you end up doing those production majors is you're with a bunch of other students who want to do production, but there's so many things you can do in production. You could do set design, you could do editing, you could do camera work, you can do all sorts of different things. And I was the only one in the whole class who seemed to really enjoy writing. Like before I had gone there, always in high school, I loved writing scripts that we would then turn into videos, turn into like little mini movies that we would do. And so once I kind of realized that was really where I was interested, I just focused double down on the writing. And once I realized how hard it was to get a movie made, I'm like, well, let me just make a book first. And then no matter what happens, I have the book and I can say, okay, this was the story I originally conceived.
That's so cool. Yeah, I mean, especially for someone who wants to get into film school, most don't get into it for writing. Like that, they don't want to do the
Absolutely.
storytelling part.
Yeah, I mean, like the production mate, if you do the production route, there's like 40, 50 kids. You do the writing route, there's like 7. It's a big that not many people go out for the writing part, but there's a big industry out there and it's really it's scary and it's intimidating. And you send a script to the studio and they rip it apart in 3 minutes. But it's exciting, just the idea of creating a story from scratch and trying to see it come to life in a book or a film or a show or any sort of medium.
I really like the process of creative related to films and writing a book. Obviously, I don't have it in me to write a book right now, but so anyone who has the patience to go through that to create a story from nothing is just fascinating to me. And but it's not the easiest industry, and most authors don't make a lot of money from it. So, what is your whole vision for getting into writing? Is it like
It's gonna
you hope? Yeah, go ahead.
I would say it's gonna be. I mean, it's always taking shape, so I don't know exactly where the success is gonna come in. I know we had talked a little earlier about what do you have to do to get in and make it happen. And volume's part of it, just getting more books. And I even found now I've had 2 books under my belt. The first book comes out, people just buy the first one. When number 2 comes out, that's a big boost of not only buying the new book, but then a bunch of people jumping and buying the first book. And so the hope is that sort of cascades. But the other part too is self-publishing it rather than going through a traditional publisher. I had a neighbor who was a self-published author, and I knew because he had this big van and all his characters are like painted on it and all his Amazon information, everything. So I found him online, but I could never catch him in person. And one day I finally caught him, had 50 questions lined up for him. I caught him by the dumpster, and he spent a half hour by the dumpster, giving me so much more information than I thought I would ever get. And he was really, really helpful and really kind. And he walked me through the self-publishing process. And he said, don't waste your time with all the querying. I've seen so many people do that and waste years of their life trying. He's like, if you have a story, if your book's almost done, just make it. Just go and do it and don't let anybody tell you no. And I'm glad I did. It's not a perfect first book, but I'm so glad it was out there. And when I read other bestsellers, I'm like, it measures up. Once I read a book where I'm like, okay, this is a bestseller and it's not really that great, I feel better about my book coming out. And
I
regardless of
love
if it gets a whole lot of sales or not, at least it's there and it's a calling card, and I can kind of keep building on that until it gets more traction, I guess.
that's the best way to do it, really, is just learning the whole process. Like I really admire that you've already gotten 2 books. I mean, it's just like just learning how to start and create that. And then I've learned that even successful authors have, it just comes from, like you said, volume, and you just keep writing and writing and writing, and then maybe you'll actually get one hit out of
Yes.
maybe the hundreds.
Yes, I recommend
Right?
any writer out there watch the movie Tick, Tick, Boom on Netflix, the one with Andrew Garfield. He's the writer. He played
Yes.
the guy who wrote the musical Rent. And even though I'm not a fan of Rent, I love the story. It's not about him making Rent. It's him making the play before it that has 0 success. And him learning the lesson of, I just have to keep doing it. That
Yes.
really was what the movie, to me, was about. And that spoke to me. So,
Yeah.
that's
So I know you mentioned self-publishing too. Like you researched probably the whole process, because I've heard horror stories about publishing and people spending a lot of money and not getting any results out of it. But then we've heard of people with success stories who went through the self-publishing route. So, like you said, you decided to just get started and that kind of thing. Like, so what made it clear for you to go through the self-publishing route?
When I had talked to that self-published author, he was living here in this apartment complex, making like 6 figures with these little, like, tiny mini books that he was just churning out with a great volume. And I knew I wasn't
Cool.
that style of writer to churn out that much content that fast. But just seeing that he had control of his business, he had control of the marketing, he got to pick the cover page. He walked me through everything you needed for self-publishing. He's like, all you need is a good editor, and you can find them online. A cover, you can find an artist online, and an ISBN, you buy it online for like $100, and like you're good. And that's all you need. And then you just go into Amazon. It's a little bit more work than that, but ultimately it was relatively affordable, relatively easy to do. And once I learned that if you go through a traditional publisher, they not only give you a very small royalty on your sales, but then also don't give you the advertising bucks. They kind of save those for your Stephen Kings and your J.K. Rowlings and those kind of bigger names. So you don't really get that much exposure. All they might do for you really is get it on the shelf at Barnes and Noble, which is a cool thing, but you're among thousands of other titles on the shelf. So I'm like, why sacrifice all the creative control and a lot of the royalties that we get off my work just to, have it flounder? So I'm like, I'll just keep building it until, it becomes a self-sustaining sort of entity, I guess.
Yeah, and you need a lot of self-motivation too. And one of the things we talked about is that you hold yourself accountable, you share your progress on your social media. I like that you're sharing all of this. So you're working now on your 3rd book,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And so, what made you want to get into fantasy and sci-fi? Is it because of being a fan of Marvel and those kinds of series?
Totally. That's exactly it. Those were the inspirations. I grew up loving Star Wars. Ultimately I would love to see something like this on the big screen. Something I wrote get translated. Even if they do a terrible job with it, at least it was there. But but I loved the fantasy elements. I loved kind of larger than life stories. I loved exploring space and planets. And I love that fantasy element where almost anything was possible. I like that in a story, because sometimes you write stories that are very true to life, based on a real story, or just feels very real, like just, as 2 people, living in the city, having a normal life. Those are great stories. They're not my stories, though. I love stuff that can't actually happen. I feel like it's such an opportunity in a book, in a film, and storytelling to tell you things that couldn't really happen, but it's fun to suspend your disbelief and just go along for that ride.
That's so cool. I mean, creating characters from nothing, and just how do you do it? It's like, are you already kind of at that point where you're getting clear on your process? You mentioned you're still kind of going through that. What is your process like?
My process, it evolved over time. The first book took a very long time to write. I'm sorry, I'm pointing the wrong way. That one, the purple one, was the first one. But Trouble in the Floating City took a while because it's my first foray, so I had a lot to learn. Like I was used to like writing dialogue, but there were a lot of other things like descriptions, like really vivid details, character thoughts, or something I didn't even really consider because I was used to writing scripts. They don't think, the actor thinks. So now it's like, oh no, you got to get in the character's headspace, you got to evolve it. So it started with just me writing and rewriting until I felt like I understood the process more. When I did the UCLA, they had like an online screenwriting program a few years later. That was kind of in between book 1 and 2. That's where I really got a sense of like they like hardcore outlined. And I've had other inspirations. Like I got my little my Bible here, Stephen King's On Writing. He's what we call a pantser. He doesn't really outline much at all. He maybe comes in with a small idea and then he just types and types and types and churns out a book and then goes back and, kind of revisits it. I'm somewhere in the middle where I found I like having a loose outline. I like knowing kind of what character I'm going to follow, where it's going to start, where it's going to end. And maybe a few like tentpole moments that are really exciting, but mainly just because when you're writing and you're writing thousands of words, it can get kind of a drag. So like knowing that moment's coming up where there's like a big betrayal or, or some kind of big plot twist, that just like in a movie, you get excited watching it. You get excited as you're writing and conceiving it too. So for me, it was more kind of crude outline. And then as I write, I always discover new things with each chapter, with each scene. And eventually get to know your characters better, which is a lot of fun. Like now that I'm on the 3rd book with the same cast of characters in the series, I know them pretty well, but they'll still like, I'll be writing them and something won't be working. And then I realize, oh wait, no, that person wouldn't say that. He might say this, or she might do that. And they almost write themselves. And that's kind of a magical thing. They're almost like your little like children, or, they're almost like their own thinking, like entities, like they're people.
Wow.
In your mind. And that can sound like, I'm going crazy, but no, I promise. It's
No.
like just a really cool writing.
It's creative. Like that is just creative work. So you're okay. I don't want to botch it, but is the pronunciation Italian style Zoboros Series? Is that what it is?
It's just I just call it, honestly, everybody asks me how to pronounce like the names and the titles. I call it Zoboros, but to me it's very tomato. It could be Han Solo or Han Solo. I don't care. It's however people read it. Yeah. I was worse as a kid when I read like Harry Potter. I was like Hermione is like how it's Hermione. But when you read it in the book, you don't really get any help on the pronunciations. But no, I just based that off the whole idea of like the Zoboros as a sort of collective thing. Was that like I wanted a story about superheroes and specifically people like born with powers and very similar to X-Men, but people don't like them. And so I wanted a name that would kind of encapsulate it. So in X-Men, you call them mutants, and that kind of very different from superheroes. It sounds very derogatory, and that was kind of the intention. So this one I wanted to be derogatory, but I wanted to sound space-like and also create sort of a world around it. So like Zoboros had this sort of mysticism when I was kind of playing around with some, basically just throwing together words until I found something. I'm like, no, that really sounds like what I want. This kind of almost fabled, kind of mysterious people that exist. And really so that became, so that series just follows that group of people. And some of the others they tag along who don't have powers, but they're the best friend. They're the smart person in the room. They have really good abilities in something. And so they all sort of form a team over the course of the series.
That's entertaining. That's definitely cool. So I've never really gotten into comics in general or story, but obviously with Marvel turning it into movies and things like that. And my husband was he was into superheroes when he was younger too. So I would be like, what's the big deal? Like initially I was like, what's the big deal? Then you realize like it's the stories and the characters that really got you into it. And I even saw the documentary about like Stan Lee's story and how he started and how he saw the vision for the importance of this and how he humanized superheroes. Yes. And so do you kind of have like, as your characters develop and everything, do you kind of have very relatable stories?
Absolutely. I mean, to talk like inspiration real quick, just you mentioned Marvel, like when I was growing up, that's when the Marvel movies started coming out. That was Spider-Man, that was the Avengers. And so I knew I wanted to do film, and I kind of hit a point of like, okay, we're getting Guardians of the Galaxy now. Like by the time I was ever old enough to ever make my own film, I'm like, they're going to cover every property ever known. So I was like, why not start from scratch, come up with my own characters? And so that was kind of the intention. I'm sorry, could remind me of your question? I'm
No. Pretty much is like, I guess what I'm also trying to see, because if your hope is that this eventually can become a movie. I'm also trying to envision like the characters. Obviously, I'm
And if
not
they're
that good. I
relatable,
didn't get to read all the
blanked
books.
on it. Yes, no, relatability was a big part, and influenced by those Marvel movies where they started to get a little outlandish. Like there's always a big CGI fight scene at the end with a beam in the sky that's going to blow up the universe. And once you have universe-ending stakes, you're kind of, or world-ending stakes, you're like, you kind of, as an audience, zone out because it's not the real world. You don't know all the people in this world. You're not invested. What you're invested in is you're invested in Wolverine. You're invested in Spider-Man. You're invested in their love interests, their families and stuff. So this book, I did want to have the big bombastic fun action for the fun of it. For, I feel like that's a trope that I enjoy. I do want it there. But when the stakes are down, I wanted it to be about friends, family, relationships. So the main character that starts out, it's all about him. His younger brother's getting in trouble. He's trying to get him out, and they kind of stumble into a larger plot where there's a villain involved who's attacking the city, and realizes that he and his powers that he's kind of kept secret might be a part of it. And the best friend is there and is trapped in with them, and they're jumping from place to place and friend group to friend group who are like trying to hide them and keep them safe, and getting sucked into the adventure as well. And there's more I could tell, but basically that, like, I wanted to,
Don't give it away.
before I go and like give you the whole plot, but
Yeah.
just that I did want it to be at its core about relationships and characters, right down to the scene I was writing this morning. I was revising something I'd written for the new book, and I realized like there's a character who's going to get killed off, and I realized that character, and I won't spoil who, but that character has a very key relationship to somebody else. And so I was like, I'm not focused enough on those two. And like, that's why, like, when I go and reread it, it was kind of boring me. I'm like, we need to focus on those two people. That way, when that character does, bite the dust, like, you're going to feel it, because you feel the pain of that character you've been following lose that other person.
Wow. Talk about being invested too, because you really have to build up that character, because eventually you want that person reading to care.
Yes.
That they're lost, or at least you care about the main character who might have lost somebody, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I love how you're focusing on the relatable side. It's true. Like Marvel kind of just went too far with all the stemming stories, and like everyone's like, oh, can we keep up? And
and it's so easy to lose the emotion too.
Yes.
I think that's a big part of my process is when you write it the first time, you're just getting the words on the page, and it's going to sound like other stuff that you've seen before, because that's what's kind of pouring out of you is Marvel, is Star Wars, is all this stuff. But then as you go back and read it, my revision, I'm very much trying to I try to stay attuned to like how I'm feeling emotionally in the scene. Like, are the words on the page grabbing me? And if not, why is it not? And a lot of times it has to do with characters, or just being too repetitive or redundant or similar to things I've already seen. I'm like, what can I do that makes it feel more, exciting? Where's the emotion of the scene coming from? Where's the conflict coming from? And once you kind of hone in on like, what's the central conflict in this particular moment, and what's trying to be achieved, and who's at stake or what's at stake, then you can start to really make the scene come alive.
Yeah. No, that's so cool. And then as you go through it, like you're saying, it's 4-part series, but I could see this becoming, maybe 10. Who knows? I mean,
I'm not going to confirm or deny, but I would say there's definitely more ideas out there beyond the main.
No, but and I think the story of these successful art authors like Stephen King and things is just that as they wrote more and more, they got better and better. And so you're refining your process, you're refining how you write, and defining characters, and just getting better. So like, just keep at it. So one of the things you mentioned, relationships, which is great. So I'm thinking that you don't do this on your own. You actually do have a community of authors as well, right? So
absolutely,
like how that's what helps motivate me as well.
That's the crew from work. Yeah, they everybody in that. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Michelle in the middle in green is our boss, but then everybody else published a book, and we all came out to celebrate together.
That's great.
But yeah, no, it's a village. Even though writing can feel very, it may just be your story and you're doing it on your own. Like, I need a group around. So I've met a couple folks around town. I kind of hopped around to find some different writing groups. Oh, there's my interns on the left from work. A lot of people. That's the fun part when you do this, especially around town. I found like you get your friends, your family, they really want to come out. And so that's always been special. And that keeps me motivated to know they're reading it and enjoying it and wanting to be a part of they want to see you succeed, and then it comes to a point where you're like, I don't want to let them down. I want to write another book. I want to get more readers. I want to grow this thing that's being created. But yeah, but a writing group was a big part of it. I kind of bounced around town a little bit. There's like Tallahassee Writers Association, a couple other writing groups where I was kind of looking just to get involved, just to get connected, sell the book, like meet other people, learn their craft. And the first day I go to a Tallahassee Writers Association meeting, it's almost 2 years ago. I just went, and turns out there was a bunch of like first timers there. And so they said, because they recognize there's a lot of new people, they're like, just go around the room. If you're new, tell us who you are. So each of us introduces ourselves. There's like 4 of us, and we were all interested in writing fantasy. And they're like, hey, fantasy group, you guys. At the end, we all got together. And from then on, almost it started every maybe month we'd meet, and now it's almost weekly. We'll meet at Black Dog and
Wow.
write together. We'll send each other pages when we have new pages. So I sent them some stuff last night to review for the new book. And it's just great. It keeps you more accountable. I know we had talked a little about accountability, just like trying to make sure you continue that output, which can be hard if you already have another job, or school or something else going on, to then focus on another thing. But knowing there's people waiting to get more pages and stuff, it makes you want to get involved. And then also, they're also fantasy guys. So like, and they're more well-read than I am. So when I sit down with them, and I'm like, I was really struggling on book 3 a few months ago. Like I was at the halfway point in the book, and I'm like, this is boring. And I was like, the middle point needs to be like that turning point where everything changes. And I couldn't figure out like what to do. And then the guys were just like, oh, this could happen. This could happen. They just had so many ideas thrown on the table, completely changed the trajectory of the book in the best way possible. It made it like fresh and engaging in. And I was excited to like take those ideas and keep spinning out the rest of the book. So
Wow.
those are, yeah. And I help them and they help me, we just sit down and like, we identify the plot holes. We identify the things that don't make sense. And also the things that we really like, it's fun to work with them and see them all. I see the nerdy ninja. That's
Yeah.
my buddy Taylor from high school.
That's great.
So, but yeah,
that's
writing, just having a community and having somebody to help you be accountable and help you with the ideas. Like you need it. You get stuck in your own office for too long writing it, and you don't really recognize like who's outside, like what are people going to think? And oftentimes the answer is better than you think. You think it's going to be awful, and they really like it, but then they'll also point out the bad parts and help you fix those. So it's a good tool to have.
Yeah, I have a hard time writing one paragraph. So anyone who's willing to write an entire book is pretty amazing to me. So like if somebody wanted to check it out, like do you have an audiobook version, or it's all
not yet? That's
okay.
sort of my last step, but I do have ebook and print copies,
Awesome.
and they're all available.
So they're on Amazon.
Yes, exclusively through Amazon. If you have the Kindle Unlimited plan, you can read them for free. If not, like the ebook is cheap. And if you get a print copy, reach out to me. I'd be happy to come sign it anytime. So yeah, but those are the 2 books, and I'm hoping to have book 3 launched in the summer, and that way you can get all 3 in the series.
This is so
through Amazon.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, everyone could find you easily by doing the search on Amazon, or like go to your website. Let me just pull it up really quick. And local author.
Yeah, check them out. I keep the prologues on that website too, so that like anytime I have the new one coming out, that way you can read it and get a sense if you like it. And if they go on Amazon, they can open up, if you click on the picture of the book, there's like a what's inside feature, and it'll let you read maybe 3-4 chapters, like enough to really get a sense. Like I understand if people read the first chapter, like I don't know if it's worth the money, but I promise you, if you get like 3 chapters into the book, you're gonna be hooked.
Like if I click on see all details or something like that.
And then I want to say
read sample.
Read sample. There you are.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you just scroll down, and then there you go. You have the first couple chunks of the book.
That's what I like about Amazon too. They like make it super friendly, user friendly.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd like to be on other platforms, but they do it best, and they have the biggest audience right now. So until I milk that audience for what it's worth, I don't see any reason making more work for myself. I'd rather just focus on writing the book, and then I'll work with Barnes and Noble or something when I have more of a following.
I mean, people can follow you on socials too, just to kind of get an idea of where things are at. You have a good following on Twitter. So one follow-up question related to social media and everything, like what are you finding that has helped to get some traction, for people who don't know you?
Absolutely. I honestly, it's stuff like this. It's the meeting people around the community, meeting not just other writers and readers, but just other people involved in creative stuff, Like yourself, Julie, I met you through a work event, and then it was like, oh, let's go on the thing. And I've had other friends have me join them on podcasts. I've had just talking to people around town. That always seems to be the best way. I can post like crazy on social media, and that usually gets more excitement about it, but doesn't drive necessarily the purchase. That's just kind of like some background marketing. But it's when I meet a new person, I kind of bring them in, I get them to follow me, and I get them to buy the first book, that like then they truly become readers. I haven't found the winning formula. Some other, Amazon ads has helped a little bit. Facebook ads have helped a little bit, but it's all just little incremental steps. But I'd say the best part is just engaging, going and like talking at Tallahassee writers, going and like tabling at events, doing book signings in town. Those are where I usually get the most traction, the most interactions to my social media posts, the most purchases, the most people talking about the books.
So cool. I know it's going to be one of those like longer journeys, but
oh yeah,
I mean, you're on the path. We're
3 years in. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep going.
I mean, you got to start somewhere, and you're young. So you have the advantage of time, which is really great. And I can't believe like the 30 minutes is almost like up.
I know. I was having fun. This is so much fun.
I told you this is great. You should keep just hopping on podcasts. Like go, Sorry.
That comes recommended. That's one of the best ways is podcasts and shows. Just get out there. So I have to be my own publicist as well as I do that. But eventually, the more I can stack up, the more I can the more content you get, you can share out and let people know.
And I probably wouldn't have known that you were an author if you didn't share on social. So I'm glad you have been. Like, good. I like how you've been sharing all your milestone wins, so people go check out his socials, especially LinkedIn. LinkedIn has been great organic wise, with that algorithm that the platform still helps out with, but the rest of the socials, I don't know what it's doing.
No, a lot of it was good advice from my boss. He was like, why do you have your job title here as like your top thing on LinkedIn? You're an author and you're this. And he's like, you have to pitch everybody. You have to be the guy that comes in the room and annoys everybody about their book. And I think that advice it really does help though, to just lead with, I'm a writer. I do this. This is, and the more I do it, the more, I think a lot of people get that imposter syndrome, even especially when they haven't written a book to even call themselves a writer. But it's like, if you're actively writing, you are a writer. So be proud of that. And the more you put your work out there, the easier it gets, and the more comfortable you get with the criticism, because not everybody's going to like my books. Not everybody's into space and sci-fi. I'm always surprised how many people are, though. People who usually read romance, it's not much romance in them, but they read it and they go, that was so much fun. I need to read more fantasy stuff. I need to read more space stuff, that's a good feeling. But
yeah, no. It's true. Like, I don't know if you're around for the summer, but you probably are familiar with InfinityCon, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to say, no, I mean, I'm surprised even some local folks haven't heard of it, that it actually happens every year.
And I missed it last year. I think I was traveling. I think it was my mom's birthday that weekend, so I missed it. But I was interested in checking it out, because that was that seems like such a good hub for fantasy. And cons are like the best place. Like, I've tried doing book signings at bookstores, and unless I'm in Tallahassee, where a lot of my followers and friends and everything are, if I go out to let's say Jacksonville, I went out to Jacksonville one time. You get 2 sales, because even though there are readers there, you are getting the market. It's such a broad audience, I'm looking for, there might be a lot of people looking for romance, for mystery, for more hardcore sci-fi. Like, this is much more of a Star Wars space opera. This isn't like hard science in here at all,
Exactly.
Floats or anything. But I'm just looking for those 2 guys that show up in Marvel shirts. I'm like, those are the guys I'm selling to. But while I was in Jacksonville, my cousin was at a con in Jacksonville. And he came to stop by and say, hey, and he was vending there. He says, I have a table there and I'm selling. He's like, it's no charge for me to get more inventory, and I'll just take a commission off what I sell of your books. And I just gave him the stack of everything I hadn't sold that day, and he sold all of it. And I was like, okay, that's where I got to go, because that's where the fantasy people are. That's where the ones that go in who want to dress up and escape into another planet, another world. So
that's so cool. See, you need to scale that process somehow. Like, it's great that because
it's expensive. That's the tricky part. But yeah,
no, I know. So it's almost like if you do partner with some folks, maybe already, I know David Herringer, who runs the event. He might know some people who'd be willing to feature your book somewhere.
I would love to talk to him. I've tried a few authors, and nobody's really taking the bait, but like I would love to talk to him because I'm sure he knows people and probably knows some strategies to like get it more out there.
Yeah, because that's your audience. Like that is pretty
Absolutely.
much, all those people are dressed up in Star Wars gear.
One thing you'll find too, if if you're a writer and you like tell people about your book, you'd be surprised how many people have their own idea for a book or a story or a movie, and they're gonna pitch it to you. I've like everywhere I go and I try to sell it, they start selling me on a book they haven't written yet. Tell me about their world that they created through a D&D session, and like I go, you go down the rabbit hole. It's fun. It's fun to talk about that stuff, but you end up going like it's hard to sell because you go completely the other direction. But they are my people. They are like the best audience for it.
That's funny. That's so funny. I mean, see, because I know you don't have a hard stop right now, because one of the things that I wanted to ask you, I never got into the whole Dune series, but isn't like the author huh?
It's my favorite book, Dune.
That's what I heard, that it like that came before Star Wars series, and it like right?
It's influenced Star Wars. It's influenced Game of Thrones. It's kind of a mix of both. It's Game of Thrones in space. It's all the houses control different planets and are doing a lot of political backstabbing around each other for control of more planets, more influence, more resources.
I mean, to me, looking at the production of it, I was like, it's less pretty. It's fascinating. It looks real. It looks realistic, obviously, but I'm just like, I don't know if I can. But obviously, it's doing well. It's performing well. Like the second one is doing well in the box office. But one thing too, Foundation. Have you gotten into that? I don't know if you
I have not.
Okay, I heard that it's almost like a combination of all. It's like time travel, and it's definitely sci-fi, futuristic, AI. One of the things that was appealing to me is the production. Like the CGI is amazing. It is just, and the story is pretty fascinating too.
He said it's called Foundation.
Yeah, so it's all on Apple Plus.
Oh, okay. It's based off the book, right? There's a book series.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it sounds familiar. I think my writing group has mentioned this one before.
Yeah.
They're who I go to for all my book recommendations. So.
No, I know. I mean, like, I thought I wasn't really going to get into it. I was like, oh, let me check it out. It looks pretty cool. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm hooked, I
think Dune will surprise you too. It's just got great. It can seem really big and vast, but it has such great characters to click onto. That to me is the most important part. If you get great characters to pull in, I see Taylor in the chat.
Yeah. Well, I love it. He's commenting, so just sharing.
Yeah. We went to high school together, because in high school, like only people call me by my last name. They never call me Michael. There are too many Michaels, so I was always.
No, it's great. No, thanks for commenting, Nerdy Ninja. It's Taylor.
Yeah, Nerdy Ninja. There's an American Ninja Warrior. That's where it all comes from.
Oh, okay, cool. But yeah, no, this was really fun. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about like your journey in being an author. I really wish you the best. So when is your third book scheduled to go out?
Summertime. I want to put a hard date on it, but probably I'm looking at July, August to do the launch. Is the plan. So I'm excited for that. But Julia, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for letting me share my books and my story. I really do hope everybody gets a chance to check them out and enjoy them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're going to, what we try to do is get highlights of the interview. And then for the full episode, you can obviously find on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. And then we usually include links to everything. So like, we'll make sure it's linked to your website. Hopefully some support increases along the way. Check out his socials. He has a link tree that leads to everything. Contact him. And looks like Mr. JP Wick also said he can't wait for, or he or she.
I'll make sure. I'll make sure to sign it next time I'm in Tampa.
Oh, awesome. So many people like messaging, even in Tampa. So cool. Awesome. So yeah, thanks for hopping on. I would love to, and this is one thing I didn't mention, but hey, sit tight, Michael. I'll see you on the other side so we can chat some more. And for those of you who are curious or want to be on the show, I have JHC and Friends, anything Tallahassee focused. I have City Clips. And if you're a Filipino entrepreneur, I'd love to have you on Filipino Hustle Fridays. Awesome. I'll see you guys later. I'll
So
see you on
thank
the
you
other side of
guys.
my